So after the Battle of Stirling, Wallace continues on the offensive and actually sacks the English city of York in Upper England. However, throughout all of this, the Scottish nobles, including one Robert the Bruce, who would eventually become one of Scotland's greatest heroes, cannot bring themselves to fully ally with him because they want all their nice lands and titles that the English give them. And so yeah, they're kind of conniving and just they're opportunists. But Wallace is full in, and eventually, and I'll let you pick up from the invasion of York, what happens from that point.
Well, then the English bring an army up, and there's another big fight. But this time it doesn't go so well for Wallace because the nobles bail on him, including Robert the Bruce,
and who's
literally just like an English soldier at this point.
Yeah.
And what happened to our back screen there?
Well, they did just have to click. That came up.
Yeah. So, and that doesn't go so well for him, and Mel is devastated by that, obviously. Robert the Bruce actually saves his life when he puts him on a horse with the crazy Irish guy.
Who's like one of the best characters in the movie.
Yeah, because he converses with the Almighty constantly. That's really cool. And he claims that Ireland is his island, which kind of turns out to be true. Because the Irish turn onto their side, but it doesn't help them. Poor Irish, they just kind of die.
It wasn't unfortunate.
It was unfortunate.
And then during that battle, you see the ruthlessness of Edward I as he just like fired arrows into his own men. That
is totally the medieval movie trope where it's like, how do we show that they're evil? Just like have them shoot arrows at their
He's like, arrows cost money. The dead cost nothing. Anyway, and well, Gavin, tell us about the end of the movie, kind of from the second battle of Falkirk to the end.
Okay, so the battle ends with Wallace getting whisked away. And he decides to go on a rampage on the nobles that betrayed him. So he starts assassinating the certain nobles that bailed on him, specifically the cavalry officers that were supposed to swoop in.
Oh, yeah.
And it kind of startles Robert the Bruce a little bit. And then Wallace is rebuilding his army a little bit, back up in the mountains and stuff, and gaining some traction again, even though he's starting from scratch. And so King Edward I attempts to set up a meeting, and there's been this French queen that's been involved. Princess, my bad, future queen.
And just to clarify, Isabella is married to Edward II, but obviously in the movie he is portrayed as a homosexual who has this gay lover who was actually thrown out of a window by Edward I. Much to the prince's displeasure. Anyway, so he has no love for the princess, so the princess is kind of looking for somebody to love her. Anyway, continue.
Oh, wait, hold on. There's a really cool word when you get thrown out of a window and die.
It's like a kind of...
It's like finesse...
I know.
Denifestration or something
yeah.
It's like epic. I was about to say, that's how you do it. Anyways.
Pick up from...
As far I just wanted to mention this real quick. The actress who plays the French princess does a really good job because she has to do the accent and everything. I don't know if she was actually French.
She was French.
Okay, so that makes sense because I was going to say that was a phenomenal accent she did, because normally what happens is they either do it wrong, like accents in general, not that I'm an expert on French accents, but they either do it wrong or they overdo it. Like, this is almost the case with William Wallace a little bit, you know? They're all like, Robert the Bruce, and it's a little bit much, but with hers it's like, it's... Because if you ever, meet and talk to foreign people, they have a much more subtle.
There's also that scene where the English king is like, he is,
which is funny because in the British vernacular there is no trilled R, so I don't.
But that actor was English, so I mean he was just doing his normal. Anyway, all right, continue. You were talking about the princess was helping William.
Oh yeah. So the princess has been feeding William information about the traps. Oh yes, about the traps Edward I has been setting for him, and so he counter ambushes them. They they get together briefly.
Oh yeah. And she has like the longest hair you've ever seen.
Right. And then the nobles finally decide to try entrapping Wallace by claiming that they're really ready to ally with him, and so they tell him to come meet them at this specific
spot. And they basically know it's a trap, but Wallace is like, this is a
Wallace knows at that point that he he can't win the war alone.
He's
He has to trust them. He really has no other choice.
He's got to risk it for the biscuit.
He knows that he probably can. There's a great scene, and we'll talk about it in one of my positives for the movie, is it really humanizes him when he's like, he doesn't want to die. He wants to live. But anyway, continue.
Right. Well, he goes and visits, and it's an ambush. Robert the Bruce didn't know, and he even tries to resist. But he gets captured, and he's taken to the English. And there's a couple, scenes. William meets the princess in prison, where she tries to convince him to,
beg for mercy.
Yeah, beg for mercy, renounce, all of his actions, swear loyalty to the king, all this. But he refuses, and so
he's a beast.
Yeah, exactly. And so he gets strung up in front of everybody and tortured extensively. And then they end up, executing him.
Oh, yeah?
So GG's in the chat for William Wallace.
And then in the epilogue, it talks about how Robert the Bruce took up kind of the command of the Scottish Army, and in the movie, he's about to accept the English endorsement of his crown, but at the last moment rallies the troops, inspires them, and calls on the name of Wallace, and he says, you have bled with Wallace, bleed with me. And they accept his call. There's an epic part where Hamish, who's been Wallace's loyal buddy since they were boys, hurls his sword across the field while the music is just blaring. It's just epic stuff.
Even the last time that Wallace saw that guy, he just punched him in the face and walked off.
Oh, that's awkward.
And basically the Scots charge the field, and as Wallace narrates he has the final few lines in the movie. Talks about how they eventually won that battle, and that kind of helped them. That they won their freedom by winning that battle. Right. And anyway, so Nate,
there's one word that we need to mention, by the way, because it's really important, and it comes up a lot, and I think it's important that we scream it right now.
Pick out?
Yeah, I think
we gotta do like he says it at the end, though. Wait, go long and drawn out.
Yeah, 100%.
3 times. That yours is the best. Anyway, all right. So let's move on to.
I thought it was so much more romanticized, but he is choking at the end of it. You're like,
the acting is phenomenal. There.
It's so true. It's so true. But everybody says it. They say it really cute. They're like, "Oh, freedom," and I'm like, "Oh," it's like it was all
freedom.
But anyway, so if we want to move on and talk about positives and negatives, we can start with you, Nate. What are some of your positives for this movie?
Come back.
So I'll go with the first one. My biggest positive of this movie is the performances. Yeah. So you have all across the board. You have, first of all, you have Mel Gibson as William Wallace, and he's just fantastic. He's like, you just can't imagine anybody else in the role, Right. He embodies the fierceness, but also the humanity of William Wallace, because it does humanize him. Especially in that scene when the nobles come and say, "Hey, we want to ally with you," and Hamish is like, "I don't want to be a martyr," and it really humanizes Wallace because in that scene he says, "I don't want to die either, man. I want to live. I want to have kids and everything." Mm-hmm. And I think in a lot of these action movies and epics, it can seem like the hero's just kind of trying to die, almost like that's just his goal is to die and become a hero. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I love the line from Black Hawk Down at the end where he says, "Nobody has to be a hero. Sometimes it just turns out that way." And I think in this movie, that line applies. Wallace didn't want to. He wanted to just live a normal life, but he was forced into action. So yeah, the performance of Mel Gibson as Wallace is certainly great. And the other amazing performance in the movie is the guy, I believe his name is Angus McFadden, who plays Robert the Bruce. And in one scene alone, he's fantastic overall, but the one scene that stands out is when after he betrays Wallace, there's a scene with him and his father, who's a leper, and he's also just a political opportunist. Mm-hmm. And Robert the Bruce, he just can't stand that he actually betrayed Wallace, and he's like, "I saw it in his eyes." It's just he has this epic line. Would y'all agree when he says, "I don't want to lose heart"? His father's such an opportunist. Well, we all betray. We all lose heart. It's I don't want to lose heart. Yeah. And it's just it's very moving, very good. And all the other performances are great. The guy who plays the English king, I think his name's Patrick McGowan. He's very good. He's just a very menacing figure throughout the whole movie. Anyway, Gavin, what's one of your big positives to this movie?
Oh, I have a lot of big positives. I love.
We can give stuff.
Yeah, I love the props. I love the staging. I love the costumes and stuff. I love blue paint. It looks cool.
The
It looks very Gaelic.
Woad.
Is that what that's called?
It's called Woad.
Now, my classics is coming out. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure, right? The painted people, the Bergantes, which is like the original tribe in England and Scotland. They live in Scotland. They painted themselves entirely blue.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's where the tradition comes from.
Yeah, we can talk about in the history section how the woad was used in this movie was a little bit a couple hundred years too late.
Sure.
But
was it
looks
really?
epic. Yeah, we can talk about that when we get to that section. But it is epic for the movie.
100%.
It's actually a plant that was used as a dye. And so they would,
I wonder, but if it had connection to those original Scottish.
I wouldn't know.
I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Would
Yeah,
it be weird
why
if
don't you
I'm
be doing that while Nate?
like texting or something? But I love that. And the weaponry is really cool. I love how like the British are really uniformed, very stormtrooper-esque, and then like the
Scots are just, like,
the Scots, they just got
dragons.
like so. But like you could have been lazy and just given them all the same swords.
Yeah.
But they've
They
got
all
like,
have like these different types
super
of,
individualized weapons, and I'm like, yo, that's kind of sick.
I like the score.
The score is amazing.
James Horner does a great job.
He is, yes. The bagpipes, man.
The only problem is that they play the main theme too much in the movie.
Yeah. You're talking about the one where he, at the end, like when he screams freedom?
I'm talking about the one that's constantly playing
Yeah.
through the whole
That's
movie.
that one, I'm pretty sure you're talking about.
You know, and it's a wonderful theme. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But
My
I think-
favorite, I don't know, what was your favorite part of the soundtrack? I can tell you mine. Mine's the one where his legend is spreading across the land.
Oh.
That high bagpipe tune, and he's like running up a mountain. That's my favorite. Yeah, the score is amazing.
And I'll start with the negative, just to go back the other way, and that's that this movie was historically inaccurate as crap.
All right. So yeah, that's definitely can be a negative. You want to talk more about that when we get to the history section?
For sure.
All right,
Go ahead.
One of my other positives would be the directing. Mel Gibson won Best Director actually for this, and I think it's worthy. I think it's worthy of that. You have all these epic shots and like the transitions. One of my favorite transitions is where it transitions from Robert the Bruce on the battlefield at Falkirk, seeing all the people that have died basically because of his betrayal, and then it just cuts to his face, just staring at his father, and it just has a lot of great transitions between scenes, and that's ultimately the director is the one that is all the shots are what he wants them to be, and I just love the directing of this movie. I think Mel Gibson did a great job, and it was only like his second movie that he directed. Anyway,
We got to talk about how Mel Gibson didn't want to be William Wallace.
He did not. He just wanted to direct the movie, but they were kind of like the studios who were financing him were like, all right, now you gotta.
They keep
we-
seeing his
you gotta
bicep,
star
and they're
too.
like, nah, bro, no, we need that.
You gotta, they were like, no, man, you gotta star too, or we're not financing it. So he was like, all right.
All right.
Which kind of felt like it kicked off his acting in historical movies. I don't know
Yeah,
what
I
he's
know.
done previously, but like
he
after
was
that,
more of
it's
an
like
action
Patriot,
hero. He had Lethal Weapon, those type of movies.
But then you start seeing Patriot, you start seeing We Were Soldiers,
Apocalypto. He directed Apocalypto, but
Yeah,
it's a
did he?
historical movie. Yeah, he wasn't in that obviously. But anyway, any other big positives for you that you want to elaborate on?
I think we talked about this while we were watching the movie, was that, the filming was actually in Ireland and somewhat in Scotland, and I just appreciated that because, man, it just added so much to, like, the background and the scenery and stuff like that. There's just, like, some really breathtaking shots, which was really cool. It's, like, very Lord of the Rings-esque.
Yeah.
Like, mountaintop views and stuff like
And
that.
that
It was
scene-
no green screen, you know what I'm saying?
The scene where he's running up the mountain and his legend is
Yes.
spreading. That reminds me so much of
Lord of the Rings.
the walking here, where Aragorn was.
Yep,
running across
oh, it's so
countryside,
good.
The two towers.
I love it.
Oh my word!
So I definitely got those vibes, and it was really cool.
Oh yeah.
And I loved how there wasn't necessarily a day that was like really bright and sunny. Like it was accurate to the climate of kind of cloudy, kind of,
Yeah, really rainy. At times. Actually, the scenes at the beginning that are filmed in the rain, they were not intending to film those in the rain. It just started pouring rain, and they were just like, "We gotta film it. We gotta stay on schedule."
Full sin.
Full sin.
But what about that scene where they reference the rain in the dialogue?
I guess they improvised. I guess he put that in. I guess he just I'll say something to kind of reference it. Yeah, he's like, oh, it's good Scottish weather, man. It's going straight down, a bit to the sideways. Anyway, but no, what do y'all think of the accents? Because that's a big debate.
It's a little bit too much.
Oh, okay. How so?
It's like a bit the breeze.
Yeah.
I was just.
Yeah. I mean, Wallace as an American, he's doing his best, and it's acceptable. It's not noticeably bad.
No,
it's not bad.
Everybody likes it.
It's just
a little bit more subtle would have been nice.
Yeah. I mean, what's really funny and interesting fun fact is that the actor who plays Hamish, the big, his friend, the redheaded guy,
right.
He was Irish.
Classic.
The actor who played the Mad Irishman
Was Scottish?
Was Scottish.
Oh my god.
I don't know how that worked. I guess, I don't know how that happens.
It's the best actor,
Yeah, I know, but I mean, they were good for those roles. I guess they had to have the big guy play Hamish.
Right.
The big brute.
Chunkus.
Anyway. But as for any more positives for you, Nate, other than the score that you wanted to elaborate on?
Not really.
Okay. I mean, another one of mine, I love the cinematography. It's just a lot of beautiful shots. We got the epic. The standout one is the one where he's on the mountain and he pans around his whole thing. It's just epic.
Right.
Anyway.
And I mean, it's impressive that they're able to craft a story about a guy that's really not well known.
Yeah, no,
you know? I'm always impressed by movies that can work with. Although, I mean, I guess it works in their favor that they can do whatever they want with it if there's not a lot of historical information about them. But
I think that's a credit to the screenplay. I mean, the guy who wrote it, he did a really good job of taking what little he had and he elaborated on it. He kind of embellished.
Right. But now I'm curious, how much did he embellish?
Yeah, I know. We'll talk about that in a minute, and you can
get
your thoughts in. But I mean, the dialogue is all very good. There's not a lot of scenes where it goes on too long. The dialogue, there's some good back and forth. There's kind of some moments that are funny, kind of to break up the tension.
There's some humor.
Especially between William and his buddy Hamish.
With his boys.
And there's just some, you gotta have that in a serious movie, Mm-hmm. But, and ultimately, it's just really inspiring movie. Anyway, so we talk about maybe a few negatives. I only have one real negative. What do you have? Anything?
But skip me for a sec. Keep going.
Other than the historical and accuracy, do you have one?
That was mine.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. So mine would be, this is a kind of a nitpick because I love this movie so much. There's one, it drags a little bit in between the Battle of Falkirk, the second battle, and when he is captured. Because it has to show the passage of time, because it's kind of, I assume it's probably at least a few years are passing while he's rebuilding his army and his legend is spreading across the land. And it kind of had this little montage, of showing how the king is dying and Isabella's all oh, I'm in love now. And then, eventually it picks back up with he gets captured and gets executed and everything. But that's my only big negative that I can think of that when I was thinking about what I didn't like about it. But it's not that I don't like that. It's a little bit draggy with it. Yeah. So, anything for you that you wanted to point out? It could be a nitpick. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything big. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably not good.
There's not much to criticize or anything like that. I mean, I felt like the violence is really well balanced. And it's really appropriate for what the movie's trying to convey.
Yeah,
I love
it's not over the top.
Yeah. It's really, for the grittiness of the movie, it just kind of felt right.
Yeah.
The opening scene's really dark, and you just it sets a tone.
Yeah, I know. I love the opening scenes.
I do too. I think there is a little inconsistency in Mel Gibson's character, maybe that you could talk about, how he starts as it's about revenge.
Yeah,
and then it goes into it's not about revenge. It's actually about protecting your family and stuff like that. Yeah, and now he's talking about freedom for Scotland. And then he's kind of dips back into, I don't know, there's just a lot of aspects of Wallace's character, and I wish maybe they flowed a little bit better together, but that's so nitpicky, and I don't even know if it's necessarily
it's true. Not you notice that. It's not it's during the movie, I don't think you
don't necessarily notice
his character is changing every 5 seconds.
But if you had told me that boy at the beginning wasn't William Wallace, I could have believed you.
Yeah.
Because it didn't feel like those two were consistent.
But then again, I mean, it is. I could believe maybe that he under the training of his uncle, could have become a skilled warrior.
It's true, but you don't see the training.
Yeah.
And you don't see, like, any of that.
I
which
have
is, like,
heard that they filmed scenes that were, I guess, were deleted of
That's
them in, like, Rome and going on their
extended
pilgrimage.
cut. Where's is there?
I know.
extended cut?
No, Mel Gibson has said that he would like to assemble it because he could, and if they ever
What a
wanted
director's
to,
cut, dude.
it's like 4 hours long or something. So
Good,
like an hour extra.
gracious.
So, I mean, it must have. And also, apparently, it would be the uncut version. So meaning there would be more violence, like more fighting and
Fair.
stuff. But so I'm wondering, like, so he said in interviews that he had to like cut this down to get an R rating, you know, like because it's pretty brutal medieval warfare,
Right.
And so I'd be interested to see like how violent the
Actual
uncut version is. I mean, there's like, so in this version, if you have seen, I mean, there's throat slittings, there's beheadings, and there's every kind of sword death you can think of. Yeah, stabbing, slicing, everything.
Clubs,
you get stabbed. People get stabbed in every way
Thrown
possible.
on fire, thrown off of high buildings.
And that's what it was like. I mean, that's accurate.
A horse dies via contact with water.
True story.
Because you can't swim.
Arrows kill tons of people.
That is, I guess that could be a negative. You can see that's a fake horse because it's not moving.
Yeah, but it just dies on contact with the water. That doesn't make any sense.
Mel Gibson's fine.
Yeah, but the horse is just like
the horse.
dead.
Oh, you have people with balls and chains just like mashing people's heads. And one of them, there's a scene of
I did.
there is a scene.
You noticed that too.
Honestly,
Anyways.
this is like such a specific positive, but the scene where the husband whose wife got taken as part of the prima nocta thing by one of the nobles, he gets sweet justice on this guy.
But then he
He's just
disappears.
Like, he dies in the Battle of Falkirk. I don't know.
Does he
really?
really?
He's one who gets shot with arrows, but he's like about to kill a guy and gets nailed. But yeah, he gets sweet justice on this dude with the ball and chain. The guy's like, I never did it any harm. It was my right. It's like, you're right. I'm here to claim the right of a husband. It's just pretty epic.
It's a good moment.
Yeah.
Really good, satisfying.
Anyway. Oh, yeah. So you want to talk about themes first or go into
let's
history?
talk about themes.
Yeah.
Themes.
I mean, I'll go with freedom.
You stole it, man.
Bruh.
I mean, that's the theme, man. Come on, dying
We
for
should
one's-
not do freedom.
Fighting
because
for-
that's what everyone's
Yeah.
gonna say.
Or we could say just fighting for what one believes.
How about liberty? Just
yeah.
Dying well.
Yeah,
You know, one time I was in my CSU class and I was, leading a discussion about philosophy, and I asked everyone the question: "It's like, if you could tell how you died, how would it look like?" And it's
Wallace
funny.
asked that question.
Yeah, it was great to ask that question because I think that the way you die is almost as important as the way you live. And William Wallace understood that. He knew that he lived his entire life for freedom and for liberty and for justice, but he also equally understood that if he went back on that in his last moments, that all of it would be for nothing.
Yeah. I mean, he tells Robert the Bruce, he's like, because Robert the Bruce is, early in the movie, is still an opportunist, and he's like, we need the nobles, we have lands and castles. And first of all, he comes out with an epic one-liner, says, and the common man who bleeds on the battlefield, does he risk less? And he stops like, no.
Yeah.
But then he says, then Robert the Bruce is like, if you make sides on both sides, if you make allies on both sides, you'll end up dead. He's like, we all end up dead. It's just a question of how.
Yes, and there's so many people in our society, I feel like this is a topic worth discussing, that do not accept the individual reality of death, that have this, cognitive dissonance away from the idea of death. And, that's my dad. And it's, I know this sounds morbid, but it's so important to accept the reality of death and even plan for it, because when I asked that aforementioned question in my class, a lot of them just said, I don't think it matters how you die, it's just important how you live. Yeah. And I understand what they're saying. I get it. But I also respectfully disagree. I think that the way you die is just as important as the way you live. And I don't know if this is just me or if it's all dudes, but I would definitely rather die doing something meaningful than in a hospital bed when I'm 80 years old. And it's funny because a lot of people don't really get that.
So you're talking about kind of the mood in which, like, how you, like, in terms of, like, what you've done in your life, and like if you stay true to that up until your death.
Yes.
Not like give it up all up when you
yes.
think
And,
you're about to die.
Because
that's what Wallace doesn't do.
Well, the crazy thing is, even your death can redeem your entire life if you die well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, that's the power of, like, a good death, is that you could live a great life and die a terrible death, and no one's going to remember your good life.
Yeah, it's true. one of my great friends, John Michael, he gave this whole story about how he would, because he wants to be the president one day, right? And so about how he would, there's an assassination attempt and he dives in the way to save his vice president. And everyone laughed at him. But I noticed he was serious.
Right.
He was telling this just as a story?
No, that's how he would want to die. And I totally get that, and I wasn't laughing. I was like, man, I understand that, that is absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway.
But yeah, all that's addressed in the movie for sure. And just in that one scene. And I think also a theme is kind of redemption. I mean, Robert the Bruce experiences some redemption, He ends up, he's kind of, so from from interviews I've watched with the screenwriter Randall Wallace, he talks about how Robert the Bruce in the movie is meant to be kind of like a lot of us are, or a lot of people are, like where we're compromising, we like to look out for our own interests. Mm-hmm. And then there's people in our lives that are like William Wallace that are just all in, and like, they're not compromising. They're just like, they're all in to what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And we want to be like them. We would like to, but we still have our reservations. And Robert the Bruce in the movie really wants to like go all in, and he eventually does, but it takes a long process.
Maybe I'll counter that slightly though, is that there's got to be some type of balance to like the all in, because I mean even William Wallace is like straight up murdering people and not showing any type of quarter to any surrendering soldiers, people he's captured.
And we can talk about this in history segment, but that's more accurate to what he was.
Fair enough.
He was a pretty brutal dude.
Fair. But that doesn't necessarily like there's got to be some balance in the all in type thing. Yeah. But I'll follow that up with my theme is patriotism, which is kind of cheating, but it's like the whole movie is themed around the importance of how Scotland is represented by the individuals, and like, did you fight well for your country, or did you live well for your country? Is your life centered around its well-being, right? Because if Scotland isn't doing well, then the individuals in Scotland aren't doing well.
Even if the nobles are.
Exactly. Especially if they're English nobles who don't even live in Scotland. So it's like, Wallace wants to live this individual life with a family and kids and farming and all this, but he knows it's impossible if his country is sick, and is under, tyranny of England and so on. So I feel like patriotism, it's kind of it's even getting a little bit of a negative rep in today's society of like being a hyper patriot or something like that.
Oh yeah, they call it nationalism.
Nationalism, yeah.
Nationalism is frowned upon as a bad thing, and I probably say I'm definitely a nationalist. not only in the sense that I love my country, but also in the sense that I think that there should be individual countries, not a global society. You got globalists and nationalists, and definitely, should be, there should definitely be countries, because we have got to counterbalance each other.
Right.
We got to hold each other accountable. It's just like the division of power within the U.S. government itself.
And there's something about individual pride in like your country that like you lose when you don't have those boundaries between other countries. And like, I feel like Scotland's got so much rich history and stuff, and it just instantly disappears when England like just sets itself up there. But then it comes back so richly when you're bringing it back to like promote this like nationalistic identity. So it's like, I feel like the movie did a really good job of like bringing out that theme, bringing out the heritage that Wallace like taps into to like get his countrymen all hyped up.
His speech is epic.
Oh yeah,
100%. He relates 100%. All that. He's like, you could, when you give, he's like, if you fight, you may die, but then again, if you, many years from now when you're dying, you're going to probably be wishing that you could come back there and say, hey man, we're not going to live under this tyranny, man. You can kill us, but you're not going to take our freedom.
And you got to wonder how much of like this type of thing influenced our founding fathers, because this is actually is this the first time a English colony like is rebelling against its overlords?
I have a cool story about that actually. So I've got an ancestor, right, who fought for.
We all have ancestors.
Yeah. Who fought for Robert the Bruce.
No shot.
Yes.
What?
This was a really cool guy, and he was a Scottish knight, and he ended up dying because he got separated from the main army, and there's this really cool story. I won't go into the whole thing, but anyway, if you look at his coat of arms, just tying into the America thing, if you look it up, it's blue stripe, white on the bottom, and then a star, and it looks very, very American flag-esque.
Yeah.
Hold up now.
Yeah, it's
Hold
really
up.
cool.
Wow, that's
Cool,
interesting.
dude. Anyway, I'd like to go back real quick. I forgot to relate one of my biggest positives of the movie. Sorry. The battle scenes are, I mean, they might not be historically accurate.
They shot
to
real
what the
arrows.
battle was like. Yes, and he filmed the arrows in the sky, and then obviously they used the fake arrows to actually on impact.
No, they actually shot people.
The price we pay.
No, but the battle
really.
scenes are just, especially the first one. The skirmishes are cool too, but the first battle scene, it's just an iconic battle scene in today's, it's referenced a lot, and it just has all the build up. You have the two armies come together, you get to watch the massive army slowly come over the hill. You have, William Wallace shows up all painted in blue woad, and he gives an inspiring speech that's still epic to this day. And then then you have the archers fire and multiple times. Then you have the cavalry charges as each little step, and then obviously finally the two armies just collide head on. And it might not have been like it happened in real life, but it's still so epic in the movie. And then in the battle, it's just cutting. You're in the chaos, man. It's just you don't hardly have any idea what's going on. It's just people are just killing people. There's just ones where this guy just bonked on the head, and it's just like
I think one negative though that you kind of reminded me of is I wonder why Mel Gibson chose to make the first battle the biggest.
Yeah,
because normally
right in
in
the middle.
movies. The last battle's going to be the biggest.
Yeah, but
that's the one that's like climatic, and then the guy gives a great speech, and then boom, the battle happens.
So the reason I would say is because he knew the screenwriter, Randall Wallace. I would say it was more his decision who wrote the screenplay. Gibson didn't have anything to do with that.
That's fair.
I would say he was thinking, all right, so I have to have him die at the end. So the end, we can't really have a big battle. They do hint at a big battle. They show them charging, and then it obviously says they win the battle. It doesn't show the final battle.
No, that final battle is fine.
If it was a real battle,
that one's fine.
It doesn't even show it. It says the Scots won their freedom by winning this battle.
That one's fine.
But it is. I think it's kind of cool that the big battle is just right in the middle. Because then, honestly, you watching it, I'd be interested to know. So watching it for the first time, what did you think was going to happen after that? Because a lot of people get to that big battle and think you're towards the end of the movie. And you're really
I think
not.
you kind of realize that. I mean, I knew that. We all know that he's not going to live. Yeah. So it's like, and we know that his resistance ends up not really working. So like, I knew there was going to be a secondary battle where it was going to happen. But that was just because I knew some history.
What's cool though is that even though he didn't win the war in his lifetime, eventually he was the one that inspired them all to.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just interesting that like, you see Lord of the Rings or something like that. You see Battle of the Five Armies or something like that. Like these big battle moments are going to happen towards the end. So it was interesting. Maybe I won't say it's a negative. Maybe I'll just say
it's just interesting.
Speaking of the Battle of the Five Armies,
interesting.
No, but also the second battle is not bad either. It definitely gets more into it. It's just kind of like they show up and we're fighting.
Yeah, there's no epic speech.
I mean, there is a pretty cool part with the Irish, who King Edward I thinks are allied with him.
Right.
They charge towards the Scots, and they're like, what's up, dude?
That is a
That's
good moment.
Stephen, I guess, got in contact with him. And then they shoot fire.
And then fire comes out of nowhere, and we're like,
burn
what?
the English cavalry, and obviously William Wallace is betrayed. And
that's got to be historically inaccurate, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know as much about that battle.
Yeah. Okay, I was just making sure.
Yeah.
It seems a little Hollywood.
I don't know as much about that battle. We can talk about the Battle of Stirling because
Stirling Bridge. There was a bridge involved.
Anyway, all right. So y'all want to move on to the history because this will be the juicy part.
Yeah, I love talking about history.
I want to. Unless you want me to give my theme real quick. So my theme would be. I mean, I guess I'll just say.
Though?
What was it?
It was freedom.
Yeah, freedom. I would just elaborate a little bit. I mean, I just think throughout the whole movie, you have Wallace's. He wants to live a life of peace, but he knows he can't do that if he doesn't have his freedom. And so throughout the whole movie, he's fighting to be able to live the life he wants with freedom. And it's just a great theme, and you have inspiring speeches, epic battles, fought for freedom. And yeah, he's just a great character. So y'all covered it pretty well.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right, so the history. So Nate, you want to lead here for this one?
Indeed, I do. full disclosure, I'm not a Scottish history expert. I'm not even a history expert. I'm not a historian or anything like that. I just read books. I really like reading books. The latest book on medieval history I read was called The Greatest Knight. It was about a man named William Marshall, who was an English knight, and he only lived to like 1215. No, 1218 because he signed the Magna Carta.
I thought you meant like he lived to around 12, 15, and I was like, oh, he was young when he died.
Oh.
And then I was like, oh, no, I got you.
No, this guy lived to be like 75.
Oh,
and
wow.
He fought a battle when he was 70.
Get some.
But this book, it does a really great job of of portraying medieval life through this one guy's journey. And I've read a lot of books on the Crusades, like Crusaders by Dan Jones. And
when we review Kingdom of Heaven, this man will have like...
I've read a lot of books.
We haven't done that yet?
No, we haven't done that yet.
No.
I've
I've read a lot of Jonathan Riley Smith, who is the premier scholar, who unfortunately died recently, premier scholar on the Crusades. I've done God's War. What was another one? Oh, J. Stephen Roberts. He's a great one. So anyway, I'm just saying, I've read some stuff. So I may say something that's wrong. Take it with the grain of salt. I'm just passionate about it. First thing I want to talk about is how, and Gavin's gonna love this because he's a classics major. But there's somebody that William Wallace reminds me of very strongly. Because I read, as Gavin did, I read.
Oh, wait, time out. Is it Brutus?
No.
Oh, Brutus.
I tried.
It's really close though.
I thought Robert the Bruce.
It involves Caesar. I was gonna say I've read the Conquest of Gaul, like Gavin had.
Vercingetorix.
Yep.
Yes! Take two! I got it! Took me a second.
I believe it's Vercingetorix.
Okay, that isn't a hard.
Wow, you just corrected the classics major. That hurts.
I thought
Dang! Oh, my FSU professors are watching this. They're like, oh god, no.
I don't know why, but I thought it was like a soft G. I don't know. Is it either? Or is it like
Vercingetorix.
Vercingetorix.
Yeah, I thought it was soft.
That's the classical pronunciation. Because full disclosure, nobody knows how the Romans actually said it.
Yeah.
So
like they would have said Kaiser.
Because like he's Germanic, so it's like, well, how did they?
Yeah,
say
exactly.
It? Like,
So
did they say?
that makes like Gavin just pointed out, it makes no sense because it's what I'm saying is based on a Roman pronunciation, even though it wasn't a Roman name, and we don't know how the Romans said it.
Exactly.
So like, so this. But if you don't know, we'll say Virgin. How are we gonna say it?
I don't know. I think Vercingetorix.
We'll say Vercingetorix.
Either one.
I like it.
Just for ease of use.
Yeah, he does remind me of him. He's kind of like
Mr.
guy.
V.
Because Wallace is portrayed as kind of one of the first generals to like defeat the English in a major battle.
So let's bring the classics master to explain to audience who Vercingetorix is, because it's not like Vercingetorix, I know that guy.
Yeah, you also know. All of our European people will know this because there's actually a lot of statues of him around Europe and stuff like that because he really is just like this giant hero. And, he's classified in Caesar's De Bello Gallico as like a barbarian, right? Because he wears, he has a long beard, he's got long hair, he's wear pants because Romans didn't wear pants. So when they saw barbarians wearing pants, they're like, what the fuck?
Why are you wearing
Well, why would you do that? You just,
You gotta let the thighs breathe.
Anyways, Vercingetorix, he's after Caesar conquers Gaul and he's beginning his conquest in England, Vercingetorix leads a resistance in Gaul, and he does something that's never been done in Gaelic history at this point, and he unites a bunch of these tribes that are formerly enemies, and he tries to lead a resistance against Julius Caesar, and this is before Julius Caesar is this big political figure that ends up getting assassinated.
He's just like a general.
He's just a general.
Yeah, but he's
actually
one of the most brilliant generals of all time.
Definitely. And I mean, you got to understand the guts of this guy going against the largest military force in Europe and honestly the world at the time. Mm-hmm. And so for him to do this is crazy, but Vercingetorix has this really brilliant military strategy, and for a while there, it's a little scary because Caesar...
They win a battle.
They win a couple battles.
I got a hot take, if y'all are ready for this.
Oh, God.
But Vercingetorix is a better commander than Julius Caesar. Get out. He says get out.
Nah, dude.
What are you doing?
Vercingetorix is a better commander than Julius.
Excuse me?
Yes, he is. That's what I said. So,
Nate and controversy.
the controversy, right? Okay.
Now we're getting off on track, but let's continue.
Yeah, so the reason that Vercingetorix is a better commander is because Caesar has the advantage of a better army. He has a more, and he didn't create the Roman military machine.
No.
Like Julius Caesar, he was benefiting from the Roman military machine. He had good supply lines and he was well fed, right? And he was automatically united. So he had all of these things for him, and on top of that was a brilliant commander. And so it should have been no chance. It should have been done. And here comes this guy, basically leading an army of dudes with pitchforks who are constantly arguing with each other, can't find food, and are up against the best, like you gotta understand, the Romans not only could field large armies, they could field large armies of professional soldiers. That's something that no medieval kingdom did that. It was something that wasn't done for ages after the Roman Empire fell. It was an incredible, and the fact that he fought Caesar for that long, he fought him for years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
For years, and drew out these campaigns and held out so well. So I think Vercingetorix.
Now he eventually went down.
better.
What was the name of the battle where they
Oh
the
my
besieged
gosh.
city?
Yeah.
I don't know if you
I
remember.
think it starts with an A, right? It's
No, it does. It does.
something like that.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at my Hemley book. But
Yep.
now that I think about it, the thing is though, there's always the tactical advantage of guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
Versus
Okay.
And so you kind of have to put that into account, and that Vercingetorix knows the terrain really well, and once you've united everybody, you get this he has the benefit of nationalistic pride, and he has the benefits of, all of the clans he's reconquering. They're flocking, supporting him, and Caesar is significantly far from Rome. But
That's
I
true.
think you're right in the sense that Vercingetorix is a really good commander, and I don't know. I wouldn't go as far as say he's better, but maybe you've convinced me that he's on par.
No,
Okay,
no.
I'll take that.
No. I just
John's like, stop right there in your tracks.
What kind of Brutus vibes do you get from William?
Oh, so
I didn't understand that.
I said Brutus partly because it's the patriotism, because Brutus is.
I was thinking
there's
Brutus
this
is like a traitor, so I don't. That's what I was
yeah.
thinking.
There's this idea because Shakespeare messed it all up and is like, oh, Brutus is like this guy that just really hates Caesar's guts, right? And he just wants to kill him because he wants the power, right? But Brutus is actually the great grandson of the founder of the Roman Republic.
I always admired Brutus.
And so
He was in it for. I can see that as in like Cassius
is more in it for the power.
He's more so. Actually, I can see the parallel between that and this movie. Robert the Bruce is kind of like Cassius, and all the nobles are kind of like the other conspirators.
They're there for the political
William
gain.
Wallace is there for, but then again, there's not like I've seen in here where William Wallace actually kills like a Scottish leader. No, he does kill the nobles.
Yeah, he does kill,
but they're
nobles.
not. He's not in a conspiracy or anything in this movie.
Yeah, but
I
think they're all united in the fact that they all hate England's guts.
Yeah.
And if the lords had a route to kick the English out, they would take it.
I guess you could say the nobles kind of hate England, but they like the England's like getting all their land and stuff from the
They
English.
use it to their advantage, but they don't necessarily
like
love
them.
the English.
Yeah, but William Wallace just doesn't.
Straight up.
He doesn't care about them at all. He doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Robert the Bruce is more on William Wallace's level.
So I think there are some parallels, but I
see
think
that,
Vercingetorix is a
better
really
one,
good
yeah.
one. And I will say at this point, really quick, that I looked it up, and the blue paint does come for the Brigantes. As I had said, if you it's like she's really popular right now. Queen Boudica is like she's a queen in England that leads a resistance against the Romans. And she also utilizes blue paint.
Okay.
So this is, and so what's cool is you brought up Vercingetorix, right? And that's Gauls resisting Julius Caesar.
Right, and this is Britain's revision.
And a few years before that, England is in this combat with Julius Caesar because he crosses the English Channel. Right. And so that just tied in so many things because the Brigantes were present.
There we go.
And so Caesar would have also fought blue people much as... whoa. Blue... People
Avatar.
painted blue.
Weren't they called the Britons, though?
There's the Britons. That's what he writes it down. But there's clans inside. So there's the Brigantes in the
like
south.
my new fact.
Yeah, so what's
And
the
then there's
distinction between Britons and Brigantes?
That's like calling Gauls to Helvetians.
Okay, I got you. But which ones are the Gauls and which ones are the Helvetians?
Helvetians would be Brigantes.
Okay.
Britons would be Gauls.
So the Gaul.
Okay, gotcha.
Anyway, alright. So to get back on track, so we don't get too far off track. Although that was very interesting. That was a very interesting parallel.
That's what you get for bringing a classics
I
major.
think Vercingetorix is like Hannibal.
Yeah.
He is.
That's how I think.
He's
about it. Hannibal's a legend.
Very great leader.
Anyway.
I feel Hannibal's like. I'm sorry to keep going on this, but I feel Hannibal's anger and like his frustration.
And there's a little
everyone
bit of,
keeps failing him, and he just keeps winning.
And there's a little bit of William Wallace in there for sure. I could
Especially, and now you bring up Hannibal, so now we have to say
Yeah,
he's got similarities to William
Alright,
Wallace.
yeah.
You know, like in the military strategist that uses terrain specifically in their brain. You know, instead of just strength and power.
You talk about an insane war, the Punic Wars. I did some reading on them for a while.
Right.
The Punic Wars were pretty dang crazy.
Yes.
Talk about scale and I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole. But
I've heard it described as the First World War.
That is
very interesting.
I like that.
I do too.
I like
honestly,
that.
you think about it and you're like,
You
wait,
do think about it. Wait a minute.
wait, hold on. Because that ends up stretching all the way into India. Because you're seeing elephants, you're seeing supplies coming from India to support and stuff.
That's
so this is a war on a whole nother scale.
Right.
All right, my bad. All right, we're going.
So back to the historical inaccuracies in Braveheart.
The armor
inaccuracies.
sucks.
Yeah. Okay.
Really
actually
does it really?
So no.
bad.
So what I'd like to hear about, I've heard that I know that the Scottish costumes
No, the English armor's really bad.
are inaccurate. I'd like to hear about
First
the
of all,
English armor.
Whose idea was it to put them in orange and black? Like, when has that been England's color ever?
Oh no!
It was gold and red.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Ever since the days of Richard the First.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, and the most so there was this super accurate moment. So they sent the princess as an envoy, and she had this surcoat she was wearing that was the English crest, which was three gold lines ever since the days of Richard the First. That was their crest on a red background, and it was crossed with the French flag, which was these three golden little, I don't know what you call that, like a tricorn emblem on the blue background, right? And it was done in a plaid kind of way. That happened, and that was the official emblem of Edward III, who would go on to fight the French at the Battle of Crécy and Agincourt, if I'm not mistaken.
No, that would have been Henry VIII.
Okay, sorry. No, not the 8th.
Fifth.
Crécy. Not Agincourt, Crécy. Crécy, I actually like Crécy better than, I don't know if I'm saying that right, that's just how they spell it in English. The French folks are like,
Did you say you like it better than Agincourt?
Agincourt. Oh yeah, definitely. Crécy's better than Agincourt. He's walking out again. Crécy.
Gavin's a legend.
You should look into that battle if you've never heard about that one.
Look into Agincourt first, though.
No, look into Crécy.
Anyway,
it's better.
So what about the armor? Like not
so
the
we've been over the
uniform.
The uniform.
So
let's start top to bottom. The helmets. There's one scene where they have some good helmets that would have been there.
Which one?
Because
I'm trying to think.
by 11, I want to say 50, the use of great helms by knights in battle was widespread.
Is that the full?
Yes.
Which is that like the knights that are chasing them and then they're on top of the mountain? Okay,
yes. So they used that because they wanted to disguise Robert the Bruce's identity, but
that one, where he's in black and he has like the full.
And there's this dynamic with medieval armies, and I don't have enough time to go into it in depth because it's a very complicated thing. But it's not that they thought about it like cavalry and infantry and archers. What it is knights and peasants, right? And your knights are your tanks. These guys were so well armored throughout the medieval period that it was actually a scandal whenever one of them would die in battle, right?
So I have a question. Were the knights the ones that would have been charging in the battle?
For sure. When they
The
say
the
heavy
cavalry,
horse,
that's
when
nice.
they said heavy horse, that's what they meant.
Okay. And now, was the armor that they were wearing,
No.
how accurate was that?
It's
And
not.
what was not accurate about
So
it?
that's what they were wearing is referred to now as scale mail, where they've got these plates.
It's like the big chunky stuff.
Yeah, well, they got these overlapping plates, and it existed in the
They
Middle
look cool.
Ages. But as far as I'm aware, it saw very limited use. What it was, I think it was usually boiled leather with these overlapping plates stitched in. But what was far more effective, because it was susceptible to piercing damage, I think what was far more effective than that was mail, which most people call chain mail today, but back then it was just called mail. And
The orange guys also wear the heavy stuff.
yeah, so and they were wearing
The
like
common soldiers
mail
do it.
mitts, and I saw them wear a mail coif at one point. But what they would have been wearing is called a hauberk, and the hauberk includes a long sleeve mail shirt, mail gloves, mail coif, and it's literally you're covered in mail, right?
Yeah.
And it's, if you're not familiar with mail, it's these rings that are almost stitched together. They're not stitched together, but they're linked together in a very certain pattern. And I was at this event for a vacation Bible school that was medieval themed. I was wearing my mail. I can actually show you.
What we should totally do.
Yeah. So, but anyway, they were like, how effective is that? And I was like, I was told them what they just told you. It was a scandal whenever a Lord died. And so I pulled out my sword that I have, and I literally just started stabbing myself. And you can feel a little pinch because it gets through a little, but it would not hurt you.
Another question, since this is your era and you know so much about this stuff. Another question I have is so when the English army arrives on the battlefield,
Yeah.
and the formations they take, was that how would you? How
Obviously, there's no
accurate
way
was
for
the
us to know
formation?
about the
Okay, I didn't know if
formations,
there
yeah.
was like a certain way that they would line up, where you'd have like the infantry in front, the
No.
horse over to the side.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
And so instead of so what's something that was really interesting about medieval warfare, especially in this time period, is that the kings did not have their grip on power was solely based on their ability to convince high-ranking nobles to support them.
Yeah.
And so this goes back to the concept of feudalism. And so it's just crazy to think, but normally you think of the king as just like ruling everything, right? But literally the royal province in a kingdom like England would have been like 100 miles around London or something, and that's it. And his power comes from his ability to divvy out lands to other people, so that they're satisfied enough to follow him. And so instead of it being like cavalry, infantry, archers, it would probably have been like this duke in this army, in his army, this duke in his army,
And
this
it
earl in his army.
It might have been that in the movie. They just don't go into detail about what nobles are fighting.
And so knights were the powerhouses, and so you have your dukes and your earls, and they have I forget, there's a word for it that medieval historians use, but it's eluding me right now. I'm going to have to whip out my book and get it, but it's their military entourage of knights that are really loyal to them, and your power was based on how large and how loyal your military entourage was. And so just for reference, like a huge, massive, gargantuan military entourage would have been like 100 knights. Like you would have gone by with 100 knights, and people would have been like, "Dang!" And these knights are virtually unkillable. Is the problem?
Except when they get skill trimmed.
And now.
And they get freaking like Mel Gibson has like a pickaxe through their freaking head.
But then there are the
peasant.
there are the peasant warriors,
brutal
and those are mustered up by the lords in their lands. And the English, as a lot of people know, had very good longbowmen. And the reason that they caught people so off guard with their longbowmen is because the Arabs had invented the crossbow. And the crossbow was like it shattered medieval warfare because it was super easy to train people to use it. So go ahead.
I was just going to expand on the crossbow theme. In the movie, there was originally kind of a subplot about how the English were starting to use crossbows, and they cut it out of the movie. But I think there might be deleted scenes. I don't know, but it was like the English are William Wallace is the scene. I think is like William Wallace is like. They're like, hey man, they're starting to use crossbows. I think it's before the first battle.
The French used crossbows, and the Genevans used crossbows.
Okay.
But not those were mercenaries.
It was more powerful, wasn't it? It was like a shot up a bullet.
The Arabs invented it because they had a horrible time with the Crusaders who could just take arrows, because the Arabs were really, or the Saracens as the Crusaders called them, although that's a derogatory term, used they were really good horse archers, and so they would harass them and shoot them with bows. But then the Crusaders eventually figured out that they could just literally sit there and just take it, and it wouldn't. They ended up killing the first few waves of Crusaders because they would make them freak out. And they would, but then there was people like Bohemond of Toronto and Richard the First, who literally just were like, sit still and keep your shields up, and they ended up calling them porcupines, the Arabs did, because they would have arrows out of their mail everywhere, and it just couldn't penetrate. They couldn't kill anybody.
All right, and so since we talk about the English armor, I'll kind of talk a little about the Scottish armor.
Let me finish with the crossbow here.
My bad.
Yeah,
I didn't know if you were finished.
So the crossbow could penetrate mail. That was the incredible thing, and it took only a few weeks to train someone how to use it. Which the longbow took years. You had to start from birth. And so people were switching over to the crossbow because it was just that good. But the English longbowmen had been, they trained as boys, and they went all the way, and they were so good at it. They could eyeball really long shots. And if you did do it for that long, then you could shoot way farther distance than the crossbow could. And that's why the English ended up catching the French off guard.
Is it now the fact in the movie most of the archers are portrayed as like these little midget guys? Is that accurate?
I don't know.
Would they have been smaller? I mean, you'd think they would have been.
I think it's because you see the
archers
in comparison with.
But they did seem like they were smaller individuals.
I mean, the only comment I can make on that is that medieval people were shorter than we are today. We know this for sure because their beds were shorter.
Interesting.
Were the archers usually more common people?
Yes.
That were drafted in. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, so for a knight, by the way, a bow and arrow is considered a coward's weapon because you were taking them out from a distance. And so the knights would not participate in archery almost at all.
And so, just to talk a little about the Scottish armor, although there isn't much. From my research, I have heard in the movie it's portrayed that the Scots are portrayed as wearing kilts. And that is apparent from my research. That is about 300 or 400 years too early. I heard one historian compared that to like American during the American Revolution wearing like a tuxedo or something. But now watching the movie, it doesn't throw you off or anything because a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
And you think of kilts when you think of Scotland.
Right.
So I think it works for the movie, but it's a big inaccuracy.
Yeah. So
from what I've heard, they would have been wearing similar armor
especially the nobles. Especially the nobles, they would have been wearing very similar. They would have been wearing a mail halberd.
But I think in the movie,
with a surcoat, and around the 1300s, you would be seeing things like pauldrons and gauntlets.
Because I do think in the movie they were trying to portray the Scots as more. They were just like peasants, and they were just like a ragged army. But they would have been wearing more armor.
Oh yeah, well, when it comes to to the nobles, they would have been their cavalry would have been more heavily armored, for sure.
Yeah. What about the weaponry that the Scots use? Because, like he pointed out, they have all kinds of, like, in the movie, different types of little weapons and, like, sticks that have, like, blades on them.
I can't exactly comment on that. I don't know exactly the weaponry that the Scots were entailing during the Scottish Wars.
I do know that the use of skiltrons, or the long spears that they used to stop the cavalry. That was, I've read, they did use those. That was a very popular
I do know, I can comment, we don't know a ton about commoners because they didn't write, but... as far as the knights, they would be, generally speaking, employing the use of the arming sword. A lot of times this is called the long sword, but that's not the accurate term that historians are using right now. It's called an arming sword. One-handed sword with a long crossguard that is designed to protect your hands. It was about this long and, featured a pommel and was so effective that historians have found the bones of slain enemies that were cut from shoulder to hip with this weapon.
So also,
and then the other weapon that was commonly used was the lance, which was featured in the movie. Yep. As they would tuck it into a pouch, and it took a long time for knights to learn how to use it properly, and it would break after the first hit, but it was devastating.
How heavy was the traditional lance?
I'm not sure how heavy they were.
So another thing that I know is inaccurate is obviously how the Battle of Stirling plays out. So
first of all, it's the Battle of Stirling Bridge.
Yeah, in the movie they call it
Battle of Stirling Bridge.
So the reason it's called that is because there's a bridge next to the castle at Stirling, and from my research, I found out that, and I've done this for a while. the battle played out in this way. So the English were like coming to face the Scots. And then the Scots had the brilliant idea of like they had to cross Stirling Bridge, and the Scots had the great idea of like bottling them up and attacking them as they came across the bridge.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just they charged at each other in an open field. It's pretty epic in the movie, but I think originally in the script that was what they were gonna do, but maybe they just changed it.
You know, something to note about medieval warfare is that we saw 3 pitched battles in this movie.
Yeah.
And that would be what's considered a pitched battle, where you meet on a field, you have these large armies, and they engage in melee combat. Pitched battles in medieval warfare were extremely rare.
Yeah.
They hardly ever happened, and we hear about the cases that did because they were, they're the coolest. And the
I don't know if Falkirk was. I don't know so much
Was
about
it
that battle.
was
The
it
second
pitched
battle.
Yeah.
I don't know if that one was more accurate.
Pitched battles were excessively rare. What you saw instead was tournaments, raiding, and sieges.
Yeah.
And just to illustrate, the dude I'm reading about right now, William Marshall, he had one of the largest military careers of any knight in the Middle Ages. He knew the likes of Richard the Lionheart, Eleanor of Aquitaine, Henry the Young King, Henry the First. He served all these people, and he was one of the greatest warriors. Nobody would have questioned that. Nobody. He was such a good warrior that one time he was accused of treachery when he was 60, and he offered to do trial by combat when he was 60, and nobody would take him up.
Dang.
So this guy was only in one pitched battle in his whole career, and even that was in the context of a siege.
Wow. Speaking of, I'm curious to hear, because I don't necessarily know how accurate there is a siege scene as well.
Yeah,
there's like a battering ram.
Yes, I would be.
And stuff like that.
How accurate was that to what a medieval siege?
Yeah,
your knowledge would have been like.
Right. So,
that's good.
People forget that.
It's kind of
short. It's like there's so much going on
because they don't show them take the castle. It cuts away once they break down the gate.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they besiege York, and I'm not familiar with this particular siege of York, but I can talk about medieval siege warfare because it was more.
And just
common.
compare it to what we see in the
Sun Tzu, The Art of War, he says that the worst. I'm reading that right now.
I've heard that's good.
Yeah, it's good. He says that the worst thing to do is to besiege cities.
Every battle is won before it's ever fought.
Exactly, right? You fight the enemy where they aren't. And
siege warfare is exactly the opposite.
He says, the worst thing to do, I'm paraphrasing of course, is to besiege walled cities, right? And that's because it's extremely long and it's extremely hard. But the way that this worked in medieval warfare is, there was 2 ways. There was an assault and there was, just normal siege. And you would surround the castle with your army and cut it off from supplies. And basically it was a really long waiting competition where they would try to scare and intimidate. Like if you've ever read Henry V in... he tries to use the scare tactics and successfully gets a French town to capitulate because he talks about.
They don't know it works.
Yeah, that's what I said. He successfully gets them to
unsuccessful.
capitulate because he's like, I'm gonna murder all your children and rape all your wives, all your wives.
I will hang your babies on pikes.
Yeah, and then they would try to scare them and basically wait for them to starve. And when they thought they were weak enough, they would launch these huge assaults like you saw in the movie, and they were extremely costly.
So how accurate was the siege? Do you think?
I mean, if that was an assault. That looked pretty whether that looked, especially with like with them pouring the pitch and throwing rocks and stuff. That's exactly what they would.
Yeah, because in Kingdom of Heaven, that's basically they throw a lot of rocks.
As far as the burning pitch, that's probably the only context in which you would see that used in the Middle Ages is pouring that.
Not on the battlefield with the
arrows.
Honestly, wait.
We're obviously in that scene cheering for the Scots, but then again, the English put up a decent defense there with like.
You kind of feel bad for the governor of York too,
yeah,
because he seems really stressed, and he's like, I guess we're all gonna die, and then he gets his head cut off and sent to the guy.
It reminds me of
honestly, he was kind of a Chad. He was like, I will not tell my uncle I've lost him the greatest city in northern England.
And then
it reminds me of the siege of Jerusalem during the First Crusade, which is so unfortunate because the Ayyubids. No, it wasn't the Ayyubids. Oh, dadgummit.
The Crusader movie.
Yeah, it wasn't the Ayyubids, because the Ayyubids came much later. It was the, oh gosh, you guys gotta talk about something else. I gotta remember this. Hold on.
Stalling. Look at this face. Let's talk about it for a second. Okay. I was about to run out of things to say.
Okay, so the Seljuk Turks were the ones who invaded the Byzantine Empire and kicked off the First Crusade. And the Seljuk Turks were really violent, right? They were horse archers, and they just killed a lot of people, burned a lot of stuff. And their rivals were the Fatimids, and the Fatimids were a little bit more placated. They were kind of a little bit more chill, but they hated the Seljuks. But the Crusaders could not tell the difference. They were just like Saracen, right? And so after the Seljuk Turks went and ticked off all the Crusaders, it just so happened that they let the Fatimids win a siege of Jerusalem, right? And so the Crusaders arrived just in a bloodlust and just totally wrecked the Fatimids, and they didn't even do anything. They're just like, so and it reminds me because the governor was literally like that. He's like, what am I gonna do? I've got the most important city to my faith.
Another question for you, if you're
yeah, sure.
is how you mentioned that they portray the English as setting up these wooden fortresses in Scotland for like each town, you know. Now you said that was not very accurate.
So stone castle building was in full swing by the late 1100s. Okay. So by 1280, you can imagine it would have been far that's when they built most stuff out of stone by then. So and if it was a wooden fortress, then it would have been what was called a Motte and Bailey. And a Motte and Bailey was... Have you all heard of that?
Wouldn't it have been like a makeshift?
No, Motte and Bailey was... the greatest illustration I can give you for that is if you remember what Erodes looks like in The Lord of the Rings. Edoras. That's a Motte and Bailey.
Interesting.
So you've got a big hill. You've got it's a huge Motte and Bailey. They weren't usually that big. You got a hill. You got your town hall keep... center on top of the hill. Down below the hill, you've got the village, and it's surrounded by an oval-shaped wall.
Is this Viking?
No. They used them across the entire medieval world.
Really?
The Motte and Bailey was the most popular form of...
So also, we've got to talk about the inaccuracies regarding William Wallace's little affair with the Princess of France.
I didn't know this, but John said that she would be like 9.
The Princess Isabella did not marry, if I'm not mistaken, did not marry Edward II until after Wallace died. So basically, her role in this movie is all fictional, but it works in the movie. But it's just totally inaccurate. She would have been like 9.
It doesn't really.
Yeah,
it really doesn't.
What doesn't work is the romance thing is a little bit odd.
Yeah,
but her giving him information about the English maneuvers is...
I feel like they're trying to show how manly William Wallace is. You know
what
I mean? She's like, oh, if I could only have a beta, or not a beta male, an alpha male to just love me like I did.
Yeah. I mean, it's not...
They needed another shirtless.
But anyway, she actually... I think she was 9 when William Wallace died, so...
Yeah, and
awkward.
I like her accent. She does a great job with the accent, but
unless it is her accent.
also, I could do a French accent for a while. That was pretty fun. I can't do that anymore. But what was I about to say?
I come to beg you.
You are good at accents.
I like doing accents. Well, it's because I love language.
I've noticed y'all are both.
I love language.
English, the Scottish have routed garrisons.
But if you watch this movie and you have common sense, you probably figured out that the whole thing about William Wallace impregnating the French.
Oh yes, that is the other one.
That can't be right.
Alright, so we gotta set this up. So I don't think we mentioned this in the synopsis. So at the end of the movie, before Wallace is executed, Wallace and the princess have already gotten together. No birth control by then. Okay, so Edward the First is dying. He's about to die. He can't speak. He can only hear. And she tells him, she's like, "Your blood dies with you. A child who's not of your line is growing in my belly." Anyway, and it's implied
it's
that's
William
Wallace's child,
which is ridiculous.
And so first, I don't know why he put that in, because you can have them get together, but not have to do that part.
Right.
Because Wallace would not want his kid to be the King of England. Now, obviously, it never happened because it's all fictional, but I don't think he would have wanted his child to like be the king of England. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. That's the only thing about this. That's a negative for me. That's one negative, and
it felt really inconsistent with his character.
Yeah, no, but he doesn't have anything to say about it. But the thing about it is that he has nothing to say about it in the movie, so it just doesn't work on any level. And I don't know why they added it in.
It's just like. Yeah.
The romance is like...
She is French.
The romance is kind of like, okay, whatever. But that part kind of makes it kind of a big negative of the movie.
It's pretty ridiculous.
But other than that, the movie, her character works for the movie.
Gavin disagreed with me on this, but I think that the French girl is prettier than the Scottish girl.
Yes.
Oh, hot take.
Hold on.
No!
Hold on. I have to think.
That's the third time I had to walk out.
The Scottish girl is more, yeah. Well, she also has like better clothes.
But the French lady missed the top of her lip when applying her lipstick, and it's not like I need the lady to be wearing lipstick, but like it's I have what do you call it? Like when you have to have everything like perfectly ordered.
Yeah.
What is that called?
OCD.
I've got OCD, and it was bothering me the whole movie. I was like, just do it a little bit higher. But anyway.
Now, was the Latin accurate? There's some Latin spoken.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good Latin.
Was it pretty? I mean, was it?
Yeah, from like the really brief that I heard. A lot of really good Christian Latin.
It was a benediction.
I wish they had leaned a little bit into the religion a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of mention.
I was about to say, well, we should compare actresses and see which ones were, but they're honestly both kind of scary.
Oh no! They're older now, bro.
Oh no! It feels weird.
What's their names?
You were right. It's Moron and Princess Isabella.
So it's Sophie Marceau and Catherine McCormick.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, another funny thing: the actress who plays the actress. Dude, the actress.
The audience needs to know that's Mel Gibson. No.
No, compare. I put it in my hand.
Look at that. Hey. Oh no.
He was 39 here, and he's like 60 now.
Talk about the inevitability of
But no,
right?
What I was gonna say was another funny casting little fun fact was that the actress who plays Murren, the Scottish girl, William Wallace's wife, was actually English.
Wait, that's little kid William Wallace.
He was good.
That's a sharp-looking guy. Hold on.
As we wrap up, that's another positive of mine. The kid did a good job playing.
Yeah.
He shows the emotion, and I mean, I love all the acting. But he's underrated as young William. He shows the emotion and everything. But anyway, all right. Final thoughts. So let's each give what are your final thoughts on this movie, Nate?
The first time I watched this movie, it's actually a really good memory.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, I was at the beach, and Tanya was here, who was this Ukrainian girl.
You hadn't seen until December of 2021? You hadn't seen until
No.
Really?
So I should go even farther back. So my dad's best friend, I believe his name is Robert, watched this movie, and he loved it so much that... Oh, Keely died on us again.
No.